John Harbaugh hints at some major changes across the Ravens offensive line ahead of Baltimore's Week 3 matchup with the Dallas Cowboys. We talked about what he said, what changed, and so much more coming up next on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Are free and available for you all podcasting platforms that includes in video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your podcast 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage right here on Locked On Ravens. We give you the latest on the Ravens news, analysis, updates, and so much more. We have bonus episodes like today, live post-game episodes, and everything you need for this Baltimore Ravens team. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. The Ravens play the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow. Big game for Baltimore as they are 0-2, looking for their first win still of the 2024 season. But we have a lot to dive into today based off of who could be starting that game at the most talked about position, 100% talked about position on this team. That is the offensive line. John Harbaugh had almost some stunning comments about the offensive line after being so adamant about it earlier in the week. He did a pretty big 180 on what his tone was about that group and that unit. So we'll talk about what he had to say, what those changes could be, what made his tone flip the way it did, because really it was a little shocking just how quickly we went from what he was saying earlier to what he said yesterday. We'll also talk about the latest Ravens news, including the Justice Hill extension, which we did dive into. We had an instant reaction show on that yesterday, so if you haven't checked out that, be sure to check that out as well. But let's just get into what John Harbaugh had to say first of all. And I learned my lesson from the first Ben Cleveland quote from the Baltimore Sun. Instead of putting all those words in there, making the font super small and the graphics, which you started to do, I just put some of what John Harbaugh said, and I will read the full quote once we're done analyzing the little parts of it. So, firstly, John Harbaugh in the quote about the offensive line was asked about it because he actually went out with the offensive lineman yesterday and was essentially watching them. And he joked that, the offensive line needed somebody to, go in there. But like you said, first here, I think our offensive line is going to play great. You have to believe that and feel that way. You probably will see some different guys in spots. Well, I think that's what everybody's been hoping for here. It's what everybody's been wishing is, John Harbaugh didn't really hint at that. Over the course of the early part of the week, it was, well, these guys have been, work in progress and, it's all this stuff about, well, you got to give them time. And there's always going to be growing pains with young guys on the line. Obviously, a lot about Daniel Falele and Ben Cleveland and Roger Rosengard and Patrick McCary. But that's a pretty big 180 from, again, the tone earlier to what the tone is now. And some of the other snippets from that, John Harbaugh saying, quote, "We're definitely a work in progress. There's no question about that. It's still competition and it's still up in the air for certain spots. That's part of it." Interesting. Very interesting. I think this is a good sign, especially because we know what has to be done on this Ravens offensive line in order to have them compete at the highest level that they can. Obviously, we talk about Daniel Falele all the time. He can't play guard, right? As a backup tackle, sure, that's fine. No one's disputing that he can be a fine backup tackle. But the Ravens, and I've said this if you're an everydayer, you've heard me say this a lot over the last week, this is a Super Bowl aspiration team that is essentially experimenting with their offensive line right now. The fact that it is a competition is kind of concerning in the first place, but at least what he's saying is that it's not set in stone. And look, it shouldn't be. In no way, shape, or form should a team go out there, play 2 games, watch a guy struggle the way Daniel Falele has, watch a guy impact the game the way Daniel Falele has in a negative way, and say, oh, yeah, it's all good. It's all fine. Nothing to worry about here. We've all seen it on film, and that's kind of been the biggest concern is, you see it, I see it, everybody sees it, but the coaching staff and John Harbaugh is like, oh, well, Daniel outplayed Ben, this, and, Ben knows how he has to practice, how he has to play. That's concerning. And I think there are a couple of different ways the Ravens could shift around their offensive line. It doesn't necessarily guarantee Ben Cleveland gets a spot. If he is truly in that doghouse, and we know getting out of that John Harbaugh doghouse, if he's in it, can be a very tough thing. If he's in that doghouse, well, there might not be an easy way out. And he can kind of say, John Harbaugh, well, we have other options. And they certainly do. There are a bunch of different ways that John Harbaugh can order this offensive line rotation. If he wants to put Roger Rosengarten full-time at that starting right tackle job, hint, he should. But if he does, well, then you can kick Patrick McCary into guard if you want. You can run maybe a rotation between him and Daniel Falele. You can run a rotation between him and Ben Cleveland. There is a possibility where Rosengarten takes hold of that right tackle job fully and McCary slides in, because John Harbaugh did say that he still wants to work both guys in. And we know this about John Harbaugh. Usually he is very close to the vest, tight to the vest, with whether it be injury updates, depth, starters, whatever it may be. John Harbaugh loves his little competitive advantage, no matter how little or big they are. So when he says we're going to work both guys in there, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be at right tackle only. You could certainly see maybe a guard rotation. Now, again, just go away, do away with the rotation. We're not doing rotations anymore. If hopefully the Ravens know what's good for them. I think that the way, and Chris Long had talked about this with the rotations, saying that it's not really a good thing. Chris Long has been on a heater talking about this Ravens offensive line, by the way. It's he's the fan base is taking very kindly to him. I'll say that. He's had a lot of moments where I'll read off what he had to say, the clip that was circulating yesterday on Friday from Chris Long. He had a couple of them, but the one from yesterday, quote, "If I were Harbaugh, I would in a heartbeat put in Rosengarten, and at right guard, I don't know who's baby Ben Cleveland punched, but that guy can play. If the better guys are the younger guys, play the younger guys." I understand the Ravens wanting to work in Roger Rosengarten. He's a rookie. I get it. I get the rotation worked for them in spurts last season and really helped in certain areas. But if Roger Rosengarten is your better player, play your best players. John Harbaugh said that. He literally said, we're going to put the best five out there. And I've already called it out multiple times, saying it's objectively false, because if you're running six guys out there, well, you're putting a guy who's worse than your fifth out there. So regardless of if you think it's Rosengarten, McCary, you have to be able to put your best five out there. I don't care if the guy's a first-year player. I don't care if the guy's a fifth-year player. I don't care if the guy's a 10th-year player. Put the guys out there that are going to win you the game. I don't care about all this stuff of, who practices hard enough, who does. We're talking, look, Allen Iverson, practice. We're talking about practice. At this point, I mean, what is that going to do? If the guy can go out there and play, the guy can go out there and play. Why would you hitch your wagon to something if you're John Harbaugh? Like, are you going to go down with that? Are you going to go down with the sinking ship of we're just going to play a guy that is objectively worse than the guy on our bench because the other guy won't practice hard enough? If that even is the case, I know there have been rumblings, nothing confirmed on that. But why would you do that if you're John Harbaugh? If you're Ravens coaching tenure, I mean, if you start 0-3, that's tough. And we'll go over the stats as we kind of dive into the rest of the show here about 0-2, 0-3 teams, which we've talked about a lot. But why would you not play your best guys? Why would you not give yourself the best shot to win? So I kind of think that that's where this is coming from, but there are probably other reasons why John Harbaugh changed his tone on this offensive line. So we have a lot to talk about on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. Don't go anywhere. We'll continue talking about what John Harbaugh had to say, because there is more John Harbaugh comments on this offensive line, who maybe got in his ear about it, and a lot more. Stay tuned, plenty to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and I love going on FanDuel, seeing everything they have to offer. We have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial event of a Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV base plan, we'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So for the Ravens and Cowboys game in week 3, the Ravens are 1.5-point favorites in that game. So if you like that line, head over to FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. We're back for our second segment. Locked on Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus edition Saturday. Hopefully everybody is having an enjoyable weekend so far, getting ready for Sunday's NFL action. And obviously the Ravens playing the Dallas Cowboys Sunday 4/25. So we'll be back tomorrow with a pregame episode at 6 a.m. breaking down everything you need to know about the Ravens and Cowboys game. Plus, after the fact, we'll be back here with our post-game live edition show. So be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow along in audio form. We just hit 8,000 subscribers on YouTube and video form. So appreciate everybody for the consistent support. Next up, 9,000. We're going for 9,000 next. And then after that, the big 10K. So really appreciate that. In audio form, that community continues to grow every single day. Now, some of the reasons that John Harbaugh changed his tune on this offensive line, I can probably name a pretty big one. And maybe there were some higher ups that got in his ear a little bit and said, this can't keep going on. This can't keep happening. I would not be shocked. I don't know if it was Eric DeCosta, if it was Steve Bisciotti. And again, I'm not saying that I know anything about it. This is just pure speculation. I'm not trying to start anything like, oh, I know that. No, it's just pure speculation. But I wouldn't be shocked if that's what happened. You know, John Harbaugh is always going to be a guy that defends his guys, right? And I think if you're a team and you want to keep morale high in the locker room, there's always going to be some level of supporting your guys, right? Not throwing them under the bus, although John Harbaugh kind of did that with Ben Cleveland, so that kind of goes out the window, honestly. I mean, I say one thing, and then, John Harbaugh goes and does that, and I'm like, well, okay, maybe that's not out of the realm of possibility. But, it's difficult when, you put your trust in a guy and you don't want to, ruin, that trust type deal, but you have to do what's best for the team. You have to do what's best for the team. Sports is a business. It's no hard feelings, right? Like if you're not performing up to the standard, you can't play. That is what it is. If you're not doing your job, you don't have the opportunity to continue doing your job, right? That is the reality of life, right? This isn't just about sports. That's the reality of life. And circumstances happen, things happen one way or the other. But to me, what either film was watched or someone was told something or whatever it was, but obviously I think this is the right call. We don't know what this is. We don't know. Maybe John Harbaugh saying that and then they roll out the same starting 5 again and Rosengarten's rotation and Falele gets the full guard job for the entirety of the Dallas game. Maybe this is just Harbaugh being his little competitive advantage self and doing what he can to say to Dallas, oh, we're going to make it prepare for everybody. And you're not going to know. We're not going to know until we kind of hear the reports of what's going on in Dallas on the field in pregame warmups. But if I had to guess what this Ravens offensive line would be, Stanley Voorhees, Linderbaum is the easy one. We're really talking about the right side here. I'm going to go McCary at guard and Rosengarten at tackle. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with that. And I think that if anything, they rotating Cleveland at guard, not Falele. Falele gets benched. That is my prediction. So that's my 5. Stanley, Voorhees, Linderbaum, McCary, and Rosengarten. Those are my 5. And I hope it is. I would prefer Ben Cleveland, I think personally. And again, we're talking about Ben Cleveland not as a guy that's an all-pro, Pro Bowl level talent. But I did this comparison on yesterday's show with Sam Njoku, which, by the way, was a really good one. We talked about the unusual solution that Todd Monken ended up hinting at for the Ravens offensive line, how they could utilize all these guys at once. So really interesting. Be sure to check that out. But I said that the Ravens offensive line situation reminds me of Pittsburgh's quarterback situation last season, where Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky were actively losing them game after game after game. And if they just had someone even a little bit more competent, they probably could have made some level of a run at a top wild card seed. Baltimore was too down. I don't think they could have made a run at the division, but they could have made a run at the top wild card seed in a better record, much better, instead of them sneaking into the playoffs as the 7. What'd they do in the offseason? They went out, they got Russell Wilson, they got Justin Fields. Those two are not Pro Bowl, all-world quarterbacks. Russell Wilson is not that guy anymore, and Justin Fields has never been that guy. But they were just a little more competent than Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. And now they're 2-0, scoring 1 touchdown. Why? Because they're not actively losing the Steelers' games. They're game managing. They're not making a ton of mistakes, and they're letting the defense do their job. So that's why some of the reasons that Pittsburgh is 2-0. So for Baltimore, Daniel Falele and this offensive line is actively losing them games. Falele is actively losing them games. So, again, you don't need Marshall Yanda to come out of retirement, put on that bulk and strap it up and get back in there. You don't need Zach Martin. You don't need an all-world guy, but someone who's just a little more competent to not actively lose them games and let Lamar Jackson do the rest. Because Lamar Jackson, he can put on that superhero cape. He can do it. We've seen him do it over and over and over again, but he cannot do it all by himself. The thing that I've said over and over and over again on this show is it all starts up front. It all starts up front. And I think there are prime examples of that. I mean, in the run game, Kansas City week 1, Derrick Henry, he can do it too. That Superman cape can come on. But if there are 2 guys in the offensive backfield every single play before he even gets ahead of steam, well, he's not going to be able to break out of that a lot of the time. I mean, nobody can, not even a mountain of a man like Derrick Henry. You have to be able to block. You have to be able to get to your spots. And one of the main issues with Daniel Falele in particular is that he's just not athletic enough. He's not fast enough. He's not quick enough on his feet. The foot shuffling is slow. He can't get to his spots on pulls. He's letting guys past him. He's getting juked out by defensive backs in one-on-one situations. He's lunging. He's not using his hands properly. It's just all this different stuff. And it's all accumulated here. And I'm not blaming all of Baltimore's 2 losses on Daniel Falele. He's played a part. The offensive line has played a part. John Harbaugh has played a part. A lot of other factors have played a part. The defense, Lamar, everybody, Monken, everybody plays a part. But there are certain tiers of who plays more of a part. And you look at that offensive line, it's been an issue. So if this team looks at the offensive line and says, yeah, that's fine, that's an issue in itself. That's a huge issue in itself. Ronnie Stanley looks like Ronnie Stanley again. Linderbaum is great. Voorhees has had growing pains, but there was considerable improvement in some areas from week 1 to week 2. Rosengarten, same type of deal. Struggled in week 1, but we saw that improvement. So you have to go off of what you see. And you can't be stubborn. And this organization, is loyal to a fault. They're extremely loyal, and I think that's a really good quality that they have. But sometimes they can get a little over loyal. Example, Greg Roman. Example, Steve Saunders, right? They have a couple of those scenarios under their belt. So for this team, protect Lamar Jackson, open up holes in the running game, because at the end of the day, and I've said this for the entire week because I'm still kind of like, whoa, from that Max Crosby hit he took late in the game, Lamar was airborne, and he wasn't like super slammed to the ground, but he kind of was. And those are hits that any quarterback should not be taking. I don't care who you are. That's tough. Those are dangerous hits for any type of quarterback to take. Any quarterback. So, it's like I'm almost like a little scared for Lamar here. In fact, I'm a lot scared for Lamar here. They have to be able to protect their guy. They have to be able to give Lamar the opportunities, and Lamar can make so much happen out of nothing. So much happen out of broken down protections and sticky coverage. He is the best at doing that in the NFL. But he cannot do it all by himself. He needs help. He needs it. The Ravens mismanaged their offensive line this offseason. They did. They let 3 starters walk. Kevin Zeitler is balling out in Detroit right now. They should have kept at least one of those guys. Ideally, Zeitler. They should have paid him, but they didn't. And now they kind of have to work through things, and it's going to be a concern point for them for the entire season. But there can be varying levels of how much of a concern point. I think you start by making the necessary changes now and evaluate from there. Something has to give, and seeming from what John Harbaugh had to say, and I'll read that full quote out quickly here because it was a longer quote than just those 2 snippets. Obviously, I didn't want to put the whole thing in the graphic just because it's a lot to put in there. We had a Ben Cleveland graphic the other day or yesterday, and font was so tiny. But John Harbaugh on the offensive line, you'll hear some of the stuff that I already said. Harbaugh joked again, He said he had a nice swipe hop out move, but look, he said, quote, "We're definitely a work in progress. There's no question about that. We're heading to where we're going to be. I'm very confident that we're going to be the kind of offensive line we need to be. We've been down this road before on the offensive line. We've been down this road in other positions, and we've had to work at it. We've had to build that because you can't be a great offense without having a great offensive line. I'd never believed it was possible. If you go back to 2008, we talked about how you start in the trenches on the offensive and defensive line. That's been true. And then when, about fielding oust at Michigan and when all that, but said that's important for us, and we are a work in progress. There's still competition. It's still up in the air for certain spots. That's part of it. We're going to go into this game and play the game, and I'm really excited because I think we're going to play great. I believe our offensive line is going to play great. You have to believe that and feel that way, and I'm looking forward to it. And you probably will see some different guys in spots, so that's just part of it." Whew. Long quote there from John Harbaugh, but with any indication there, again, could be competitive advantage, but with these comments, I do expect the Ravens to make some changes, which would be a very welcome sight. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll get into more Ravens news, talk about that Justice Hill extension a little bit, dive into more comments as well. Stay tuned, a lot to get to on this bonus episode of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player step projections and watch the winnings roll in. So one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So for this Ravens and Cowboys game, if you like more on the Zay Flowers receiving yards, more on maybe even Mark Andrews and his receiving yards, go over to PrizePicks now. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We return our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus edition of the show. Appreciate everybody again for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe, video form and audio form. We bring you again 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage plus bonus episodes like these, our pregame episodes on Sundays, our postgame live streams. We have a lot of Ravens coverage here. So if you're a Ravens fan or you just want some insight on the team, be sure to keep it here on Locked On Ravens. If you're an everyday, you listen every single day, really appreciate you tuning in and your consistent support. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. Hope you stay a while. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back in. If you have a friend or a family member who is a Ravens fan or, again, wants that insight, be sure to send them our way over here on Locked On Ravens. Now, the Ravens made a move yesterday. We talked about it on one of our instant reaction live streams. Justice Hill gets a 2-year, $6 million extension from the Ravens. I'm not mad at this move at all. I know that the Ravens can't hand out as many of these smaller deals as they could in the past because of Lamar Jackson's big contracts, Nnamdi Madubuike now on his big deal, other big contracts as well. And something we talked about on the live show yesterday is the fact that, well, some of these deals are going to expire, right? Ronnie Stanley's in the last year of his deal. Marlon Humphrey's deal will come up soon here, but other deals will replace that in terms of cap hit. And then you have to figure out what to do with guys like Tyler Linderbaum, Kyle Hamilton, Zay Flowers. Those are all guys that are going to come up, not like in the very, very near future, but it'll sneak up on us, I'm pretty sure. So, look, you can't give out those 3-year, $18 million contracts 5 times over anymore because you got to save more for the bigger deals. But look, they're not paying them $6 or $7 million. It's $3 million per year for a player that has improved tremendously over the course of the last 3 seasons. I've been very impressed with his trajectory, particularly in pass protection. I mean, he's somebody, and look, literally blocking Chris Jones. They're essentially paying $6 million for an offensive lineman because Justice Hill is blocking Chris Jones out there and doing a heck of a job at it. So, he kind of talked about that and said that he got the call after that play after that game. So he said maybe that was a catalyst in that, but he had a good quote. And now I'm forgetting. I forgot to make a couple graphics. I'm remembering now. Should have made some graphics for this segment. I'll make them for tomorrow. But Justice Hill ended up saying the grass sometimes isn't greener He's a Raven. It's where he wants to be. And they got the call. It worked from there. So, look, I think this is fine. There was a little bit of uncertainty, and there still kind of is about what this Ravens running back room is going to look like next season. This kind of shores it up a tiny bit with Justice Hill. Keaton Mitchell, I think, will have more of an impact next season as opposed to this season as he just works back from that ACL injury. And not that he won't do anything this season, but I just think it's going to take a little while for him to, fully get back into the swing of things. But the Derrick Henry deal could very easily be a one-year situation for them, where this is the only year he plays in Baltimore, and then they move on. That could very well be a possibility. So I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be what happens, but it is not a guarantee that Derrick Henry plays in Baltimore next season. So if that's the case, you have to add another player besides Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill. I wouldn't go into the season with that rotation personally. I'd probably add another guy there. But look, he's a value on special teams. The Ravens love their special teams guys. So it makes sense. It makes sense. And in this running back market where value was down anyway, it kind of checks out where, sure, you're paying $3 million for a backup running back or even, your third string running back. I get if you're looking at it from that perspective, but I'm fine with this move. I have no issues with it. It's not a huge chunk of money, and the Ravens will, they're going to be up against it cap wise, but that was going to be the case if they sign Justice Hill to this extension or not. So I'm not worried about it, and I'm glad that the Ravens were able to get a deal done with him. Other comments from John Harbaugh. We'll get into the injury report a little bit as well. He was asked about Micah Parsons and if he thought because he talked about how he went with the offensive line, did a little nice move. Did you think about wearing the Micah Parsons number for the pass rush reps? And he said doesn't want to motivate a guy like Micah Parsons. But good news to the Ravens, Nate Wiggins back at practice. And, he practiced at full speed, had the red jersey on, but he was in full go and thought he looked great. So it's up to the doctors and the protocol, obviously, and concussion protocol to clear him. And so for the Ravens, their final injury report, only one player listed as out for this game, and that is Saleh, who, again, dealing with those personal reasons. But other than that, everybody, you have 3 questionables in Deontay Hardy, who was able to practice in full on Friday. David Ojabo went from limited on Thursday to full on Friday. He's questionable with a quad. That Nate Wiggins, as we just talked about, he hasn't been cleared yet from the protocol, but did everything at full speed. So hopefully we'll get some good news on Nate Wiggins today as he hopefully clears the protocol. Other than that, Adisa Isaac, 3 straight practices in full. Ronnie Stanley, Kyle Van Noy, Kyle Hamilton, Jalen Armour Davis, all those guys putting in full practices on Friday. So the Ravens are healthy right now. They're healthy relatively, right? Obviously they're banged up in certain areas, but they don't have any huge contributors down right now. And that's really good. We've seen a lot worse earlier in the season for this team. So any good health that they can have, I tend to live in the moment and cherish it, because we know with this team, it can go downhill very fast, as is the NFL. That's all I have for you here today, though, on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Be sure to, again, like and subscribe in video form, follow along in audio form as well for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be right back here 6 a.m. Eastern time with a pregame episode getting you ready for that Ravens and Dallas game. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on game day on Locked On Ravens.